It all started on a rainy Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that makes you want to stay indoors with a warm cup of tea and reflect on life. I never imagined that a quiet moment in my own living room would turn into something that changed the way I saw my family. Especially her, my daughter-in-law. She always had a sharp tongue, but nothing could have prepared me for the words she threw at me that day. "Old and useless," she said, with a tone so cold it pierced deeper than any winter wind. I didn't say much in the moment. I just sat there, stunned, looking at her as if I didn't recognize the woman my son had chosen to spend his life with. For years, I had done everything I could to make her feel welcome in our family. I never wanted to be the kind of mother-in-law who meddles or complains. I kept to myself, helped when asked, and never expected anything in return. But somehow, that still wasn't enough for her. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, like I was just furniture, something that came with the house and didn't serve much purpose anymore. It stung, deeply. Not just because of what she said, but because I had always treated her like a daughter. And hearing those words, in my own home, made me question everything. But instead of breaking down or arguing, I did something else. I smiled. Because I knew something she didn't. A little secret that had been sitting quietly in a drawer in my bedroom, a document I had carefully crafted not too long ago. My will. And guess whose name was in it? Hers. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. I had included her because I thought she was family, because I believed in kindness and leaving something meaningful behind. That changed the moment she looked me in the eye and decided I no longer mattered. I won't lie, part of me wanted to react, to tell my son what she said, to confront her with the same sharpness she used against me. But I realized something more powerful than words or arguments, silence and action. So I went upstairs, opened that drawer, and made one small change. It took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I removed her name. What happened next, though? I never saw coming. Because when she found out, the tables turned in a way none of us expected. And let's just say, karma has a very patient way of showing up when the timing is just right. Stay with me, because this story is only just beginning. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days after. The words, old and useless, echoed in my mind like a broken record. I wasn't expecting gratitude or even praise. I never raised my kids for that. But disrespect? That cut deep. Especially from someone I had opened my heart and home to. I kept going over the past few years, wondering if I had missed the signs. Maybe she had always seen me as a burden, just waiting for me to fade into the background so she could take my son and our families home without the old woman in the way. It hadn't always been like this. When my son, Daniel, first introduced me to Sarah, she seemed sweet. Polite. A little guarded, maybe, but I thought she was just nervous. I welcomed her with open arms, even helped plan their wedding, and made sure she felt comfortable the first time she came over for Sunday dinner. I let them move in temporarily after Daniel lost his job and needed some time to get back on his feet. Just for a few months, he said. That was nearly 2 years ago. In that time, I saw Sarah change. She became distant, then cold. Conversations turned into one-word answers, smiles became sighs, and the little moments, like checking if I needed help with groceries or asking how my day was, just stopped. At first, I brushed it off. People go through things. But slowly, I began to notice how she'd only be kind when others were watching. Especially Daniel. Around him, she'd call me Mom and act sweet. But the second he walked out of the room, her tone would shift like a light switch. One moment that still haunts me happened last winter. I had a small fall in the garden, nothing serious, just slipped on some ice. I called out for help, and it was Sarah who came out. She looked down at me and sighed, annoyed. Not worried, annoyed. You shouldn't be out here at your age, she muttered, almost under her breath. That's when I knew something had shifted. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as a chore. But that day in the living room, when she openly said I was old and useless, that was the last straw. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded and quietly walked upstairs, like I'd just remembered something. The document was already there in my drawer, my will. I had put her name in months ago because I thought she deserved to feel like part of this family. I thought maybe leaving her something, a gesture, even if small, would show I valued her. But I realized then that kindness isn't always returned. So I crossed her name off. No drama. Just a signature. Just the truth. What she didn't know was that someone else had overheard that conversation. And what came next wasn't just about money or a will, it was about loyalty, respect, and what family really means. But I'll tell you this, when the truth finally surfaced, it shook everything in our home. And Sarah? She wasn't ready for what happened next. That evening, after I crossed her name out of my will, I sat in the kitchen and watched the kettle boil, my thoughts spinning. Daniel came home a bit later than usual. He kissed me on the cheek like always and asked how my day had been. I smiled and said, "Oh, nothing out of the ordinary." I wasn't ready to tell him. Not yet. I didn't want to stir things up without thinking it through. But little did I know, someone else already had an idea of what happened earlier. It was Emily, my 13-year-old granddaughter. Daniel's daughter from his first marriage. She had been in the hallway when Sarah called me old and useless. I hadn't realized she was there. I didn't even know she heard it until the next day. She came to me quietly, sat at the edge of my bed, and asked, "Grandma, why did Sarah say that to you?" Her little voice cracked when she said it. I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. Not just for me, but for her, because no child should feel torn between adults like that. I didn't want her to carry that burden, so I told her gently, "Sometimes people say things they don't really mean when they're upset." But she looked me in the eyes and said, "She meant it." I heard her. "I see how she talks to you when Dad's not around." And just like that, the quiet hurt I'd been pushing aside started to feel very real again. What made things even more complicated was Daniel's loyalty. He loved his wife. That much was clear. And he loved me too, but I could tell he was often stuck in the middle. I'd noticed the tension between them growing, small things, like how she rolled her eyes when he offered to help me carry something, or how she'd leave the room whenever we sat down to chat. Daniel would always try to smooth things over, saying she was tired or had work stress. I let him believe that, for his sake. But inside, I knew it went deeper. Meanwhile, Sarah had no clue her words were echoing far beyond the living room. She acted like nothing had happened, made breakfast the next day, smiled like usual. But something had shifted. She started asking strange questions. "Have you looked into updating your will lately?" she asked casually one afternoon, not even meeting my eyes. "You know, just in case." I said nothing, just nodded. But in my mind, I was thinking, "Oh, I already did. And you're not in it anymore." The real twist came a few days later, when I received a call from my lawyer's office. He said someone had called pretending to be me, asking about making changes to the will. My stomach dropped. It didn't take much guessing to figure out who it might have been. I knew then that this wasn't just about disrespect anymore. It was about something more, manipulation, greed, and the masks people wear when they think no one's watching. And if Sarah was willing to cross that line, I had to be ready for whatever came next. Because now, this was more than just a family disagreement. It was a storm quietly building behind closed doors, and it was only a matter of time before it broke. The next few days felt like walking through a minefield. Everything looked the same on the outside, me making tea in the mornings, Sarah scrolling on her phone at the kitchen table, Daniel getting ready for work, Emily packing her school bag. But underneath it all, there was a tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I was careful with every word I said, every look I gave. Sarah had gone quiet, but not in a peaceful way, in a watching, waiting kind of way. The way someone gets when they know something slipped out of their hands and they're trying to get it back without drawing attention. Emily stopped speaking to Sarah altogether. I could tell she was angry in her own quiet way, always sitting next to me, always watching how Sarah treated me. It broke my heart, but I couldn't tell her to pretend everything was fine. Because it wasn't. I still hadn't told Daniel. I wasn't sure how. He had a kind heart, but sometimes he didn't see things until they were right in front of him. I wanted to protect him. But I also knew that staying silent much longer would only let the lies grow bigger. Then came the envelope. I found it tucked under the front door one afternoon, just after Sarah had gone out for groceries. There was no name on the outside, just my address written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a printed copy of a revised will, one that listed Sarah as the sole beneficiary. It wasn't my signature at the bottom, but it looked eerily close. The date was last week. My hands shook as I read it. Someone had gone to great lengths to fake it. And not just that, there was a sticky note attached with a message that read, "You'll thank me later." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Angry that someone I welcomed into my family, someone I trusted, thought they could erase me from my own story. But I didn't want to explode. No yelling, no confrontation yet. I wanted to be smart. So I called my lawyer and asked him to come by quietly the next day. We needed to talk in person. I also asked Emily to stay with a neighbor for a few hours, just in case things got tense. That night at dinner, I looked across the table and watched Sarah laughing at something on her phone. She acted like nothing had happened. But I knew better now. I had the paper. I had the evidence. What I didn't have yet was the right moment to bring it all into the light. The storm was just seconds from hitting. One wrong move, one wrong word, and everything could break apart. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. Because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And some people forget, when you push someone quiet for too long, eventually, they speak. The next morning, the air in the house felt heavier than usual. I barely slept the night before, going over every detail in my head. The fake will, the handwriting, that smug little note, "You'll thank me later." I tucked the envelope deep inside the drawer next to my bed and waited for my lawyer to arrive. We agreed to keep things low-key. No drama. Just facts. I made tea, tried to stay calm, and told Sarah I had invited an old friend over for a quick chat. She didn't ask questions. She never did when she was too busy scheming. At exactly 10 a.m., Mr. Grant, my lawyer of over 20 years, stepped into the house with a leather folder under his arm and a careful smile on his face. We sat in the living room, and I handed him the forged document. He studied it in silence, his brow furrowing deeper the longer he looked. "This is serious," he said finally. "If someone's faking legal documents in your name, we need to take action right away. You're not just being disrespected anymore, this could be criminal." Before I could respond, the front door opened. Sarah walked in, holding 2 grocery bags and humming a tune. She froze when she saw Mr. Grant. Her eyes darted between us, and for a second, something shifted in her expression. She wasn't surprised, she was nervous. "Oh, I didn't know we had company," she said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay?" Mr. Grant stood up, calm and professional. "We were just reviewing some important paperwork. Nothing to worry about." She nodded slowly but kept her eyes on me. She knew. She had done something, and now she could feel the ground beneath her starting to crack. But just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone else, so I hesitated. I opened it to find a woman I hadn't seen in years, Daniel's ex-wife, Rachel. She looked uneasy but determined. "Can we talk?" she asked, her eyes flicking towards Sarah standing in the hallway. Rachel and I hadn't spoken much since the divorce. We'd always been polite, kept things civil for Emily's sake, but we were never close. So her sudden visit threw me completely off balance. We stepped outside onto the porch, and she got straight to the point. "I think Sarah's planning something," she said. "Emily called me last night. She told me she found a document in the trash, a page that looked like a will. I think it was a draft. And it had my name on it, crossed out. I felt my breath catch. Rachel's name? She's trying to make it look like you're unstable, Rachel added. She's planting things, moving things around. Emily says she's been going through your drawers when you're asleep. My knees went weak. What Sarah was doing wasn't just about greed. It was deeper. She wanted to rewrite everything, erase people, control the narrative, and twist the story of this family to her liking. Now I knew I wasn't just protecting a will. I was protecting my legacy, my son, and my granddaughter's future. And the worst part? Daniel still had no idea. That afternoon, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I had spent hours thinking through everything Rachel told me. The fake documents. The manipulation. Sarah digging through my things while I slept. It all made sense now, how she shifted from polite to icy, how she asked about my will so casually, how she always seemed 2 steps ahead of everyone. But this time, I was ready. I wasn't going to stay silent any longer. Daniel came home around 5. I asked him to sit with me in the living room. He looked tired, confused, but he sensed something was off. Sarah joined us, acting as if it was just another quiet evening. I took a deep breath and said, "Daniel, I need to show you something." Then I handed him the envelope, the fake will, the forged signature, the sticky note. At first, he looked puzzled. Then his eyes narrowed as he read the name at the bottom. "What is this?" he asked slowly. "It's a copy of a will someone tried to submit under my name. Only, I didn't write it. And I didn't sign it." I saw it hit him like a wave. He looked at Sarah, searching her face for an answer. She didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She just froze. Rachel stepped into the room then. I had asked her to come by, just in case Daniel needed the full picture. Her presence made Sarah snap. "So you brought her here now?" she barked. "Of course you did." Daniel stood up, voice low but firm. "Sarah. Did you do this?" And just like that, the walls crumbled. She broke down, claiming she was scared, that she thought I was going to leave everything to Rachel and Emily, that she had nothing to her name. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said through tears, but none of it felt sincere. It felt like someone who finally got caught, trying to spin one last story. Daniel was devastated. Not angry, just heartbroken. He walked out of the room without saying another word. I heard the door to the backyard close behind him. But just when I thought it was over, Rachel pulled something out of her purse. "There's one more thing," she said, her voice shaking slightly. She handed me a photo, a blurry snapshot Emily had taken on her phone. It showed Sarah at a mailbox, holding what looked like documents, and standing next to her was a man I didn't recognize. "He's a friend of hers." Emily overheard them talking last week. They were discussing moving out, after everything was settled. She thought they were being careful. But Emily caught it. So that was the twist. Sarah hadn't just been trying to cut me out, she had a backup plan. Another life waiting once she got what she wanted. But she didn't count on a child's intuition. Or a family that, even when broken, could still come together to protect what mattered. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. And as for my will, it was rewritten one final time. With clarity. With intention. And with every lesson I had learned carved into each line. The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. The house, once full of unspoken tension, now held something else, relief. There were no more sideways glances, no more cold silences. Sarah moved out that same week. She didn't argue, didn't try to talk her way out of it again. She packed her things while Daniel helped, silent but respectful. She gave one final look before she left, as if searching for sympathy. But none of us had anything left to give her. Daniel was different after that. Quieter, more thoughtful. I could see the weight of everything pressing on him. He came to me one evening with tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said, "I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." I took his hand and told him what I believed deep down. sometimes, we don't see what we don't want to see. Love can cloud things, especially when we want to believe the best in someone. But that doesn't mean we can't come back stronger once the truth is clear. Emily, sweet girl that she is, stayed close to me through it all. We started spending more time together, reading in the garden, baking like we used to. She told me she wanted to learn how to make my apple pie the proper way. I laughed and promised to teach her everything, including the secret ingredient. She reminded me that no matter how messy life gets, love always finds a way to root itself in the right people. Rachel and I found new ground too. We weren't just polite anymore, we were partners in healing. She thanked me for trusting her, and I thanked her for speaking up when it mattered. We didn't need to be best friends. But we shared a respect now, one that comes from going through something together and standing on the other side of it stronger. As for the will, yes, I made the changes. Not out of revenge, but out of clarity. Everything I left behind would go to those who truly valued it. Not just in money or property, but in memories, in love, in the roots of a family that had weathered something hard and come out whole. And you know what? I don't feel old and useless. Not even close. I feel wiser. Stronger. More at peace with who I am and who I've chosen to keep close. That insult, those painful words, they don't define me. They never did. What defines me is what I did with them. I chose truth. I chose love. And I chose myself. So if there's one thing I'd want anyone to take away from this story, it's this: don't underestimate your quiet strength. Don't let anyone write your story for you. And remember, sometimes, the loudest power comes from the calmest decision. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth, and the right people to stand beside me when it mattered most. 36.